So we looked at a basic auto-tune workflow using a few of the controls in auto mode, but I wanted to take you through a more complex example using some of the other controls to give ourselves a little more finesse over the end result. Now I've brought in the TMD Vox and the TMD music wave files into my DAW, and on the vocal track, again, I'm going to go ahead and insert my auto-tune plugin. Now, generally, I want to insert auto-tune before any other processing, especially any kind of reverb or delay or distortion processing, because I don't want any other plugins to get in the way of auto-tune being able to detect the pitch of the source material. So I've brought this up, and let's go ahead and just listen to what we're going to be working with auto-tune bypassed.
So take me down, and my feet will follow wherever my heart goes. I'll come around like I always. I'll keep my feet on the ground.
Cool, and I just skipped ahead to the chorus section for this specific example, but you can practice on the entire song. I included the entire song in the exercise assets. Now, what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to set my input type. Again, with this male vocal, I'm just going to pick the alto tenor option here. I'm going to leave the tracking alone because this is a very clean studio vocal recording. Now, I'm going to set my key. The key of this song is A flat major, and that's going to set my target notes here to that specific scale. Now, with this just set at the default of 20 milliseconds, that retune speed, let's just listen here and see what it sounds like.
So take me down, and my feet will follow.
It's already sounding pretty good. Let's listen to that bypassed.
So take me down, and my feet will follow wherever my heart goes. I'll come around like I always.
So it's improving it. It's getting a little robotic. I can increase that retune speed to really hear that auto-tune effect.
So take me down, and my feet will follow.
So what's happening there is I've set this to 0 milliseconds, so it's retuning the incoming signal instantly. So it's determining the incoming pitch and quantizing it to one of these target notes in the scale instantly. If I back off on that, let's try 30, we might be able to get a little bit more natural result.
So take me down, and my feet will follow wherever my heart goes. I'll come around like I always. I'll keep my feet on the ground. I'll keep my feet on the ground.
So that's pretty good, but I'm still hearing, let's say towards the, I'll get my feet on the ground. It's sort of going through the notes as he falls down there. Let's take a listen to just that phrase. Now really emphasize that by turning up the retune speed.
I'll get my feet on the ground.
He's kind of just cycling through the notes, which is kind of a cool effect, but not really something that I want in a more natural sounding vocal. So I'm going to back that off. But if I back it off too much, I'm just not going to get enough tuning on this vocal.
I'll get my feet on the ground. Yeah.
So that cleans that up. But yeah, it's still a little bit pitchy there. So I'm going to push that back up. And here's where some of these other controls come in. I have this new Flex Tune control, which is new to version 8. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to essentially tell Auto-Tune to ignore notes when they're not very close to one of these target pitches. So the more I push this clockwise, the smaller the window around a note becomes when Auto-Tune is going to act on that incoming pitch with the retune speed. So when this is set to classic, Auto-Tune's always pulling the notes into pitch. Now, as I move this towards the right, it's actually going to be ignoring some of the drift in between notes. So I can kind of retain some of the melisma, some of the falls and the scoops, and Auto-Tune's not constantly trying to retune that. So let's push that up on retune speed, and we'll get a little flex tune and listen to that pass.
Knocking my feet on the ground.
So that sounds really good. I'm not getting that kind of cycling through those notes at the end there.
Knocking my feet on the ground.
And again, you're really going to need to experiment and play with these controls and listen. There's no one set and forget parameter here. You just kind of need to listen, tweak it in one direction, tweak it in the other direction until you get satisfying results.
Knocking my feet on the ground.
Now, sometimes if the singer has quite a bit of vibrato, what can happen is that Auto-Tune will try to track that vibrato and it thinks you're actually oscillating between notes. And that can also create kind of this weird cycling between notes in the scale. Now, I can click the Targeting Ignores Vibrato option, and I usually leave that on for most singers unless they don't have any vibrato. And I find that it's a little bit more stable in detecting the center pitch when the singer has a significant amount of vibrato. Now, I can use the natural vibrato control to minimize an existing vibrato or maximize that. Now, it's not going to add vibrato. This isn't adding vibrato to a singer that doesn't have it. It's adapting the vibrato that exists. So if you want to tighten it up a little bit, you can do that with the natural vibrato setting. I'm just going to leave that alone. On this vocal, Josh doesn't have too much vibrato going on. Now, the humanize control, in this situation, I don't think I'm going to need a lot of it, but what that does is if you find that you have a lot of very short notes that need a fast retune speed, but on the longer, very sustaining notes, it can tend to sound robotic. What you can do is add a little bit of the humanize control. And what that does is it allows you to have a fast retune speed, but on longer notes, it'll allow some of that natural pitch drift back into the signal. So let's listen to sort of our little recipe we've got here.
So take me down, and my feet will follow wherever my heart goes. I'll come around like I always. I'll get my feet on the ground. I'll get my feet on the ground. Yeah.
And I think that sounds pretty good. Now, what you might find is that on certain sections of the song, you're using certain retune, flex tune, and humanize controls, but on other sections, you need to use either faster or slower retune speeds or more of the flex tune option. And so what you can do is you can actually take and automate these controls, or you can simply work section by section and print your results in your DAW. I have another quick example for you to show you exactly what the flex tune is doing here. And I've brought in this little file here called flex tune example. That's also in the exercise folder. I'm going to close down this Auto-Tune and open up this one that I've already inserted on the track. And let's just listen to that with this bypassed. What I've got there is just a synth tone, and it's moving between A and A sharp. But I've got a nice glide between those so that I can show you what the flex tone does. Now, if I just enable Auto-Tune here, notice I've set it to instrument key of A major. Now, there's no A sharp in the key of A major. So what's going to happen, since I have the retune speed set to 0 here, is it's going to stay on A until it moves up and up and up, and then it's going to switch to B. You can see that it was pulling it to A, pulling it to A, pulling it to A, and when it got to the A sharp, it just jumped to B. Now, what if that note was some kind of a blue note, or I was bending a note in a vocal and I wanted to retain that? Let's see what happens if I add a little bit of flex tune here. Now, not only does it go to the A flat and not the B, because again, what the flex tune is saying is it's saying when a note isn't near one of these targets, just don't apply tuning to it. So it's allowing that note that is not in my scale, but it's also allowing some of that bend back in. Now, the more I push this, the more bend that's going to allow there. And effectively pushing this to 100 is really sort of disabling all the tuning. So I'd want to kind of back that off. In this case, this is already in tune, but I'd want to back that off to somewhere, I find between the 30 and the 50. But again, you're really going to want to do this to taste and listen to the signal. But it's a really great way to leave in some of those natural emotional elements in a vocal, or a bend or a scoop or a glide, without Auto-Tune constantly trying to grab hold of the pitch and retune it.